Hi, and welcome to the Language Gym YouTube channel. I'm excited because today is our first ever CPD quickie, and I will be talking to you about a topic that seemed to interest quite a lot of you: curriculum design. Before I even start, though, let's get this clear: this is not prepped, this is not rehearsed, it's totally and totally unscripted. So this is my only prompt. It's like a grubby sheet of paper scribbled on, and there is no ambition to be academic or to bring in citations. I might mention Paul Nation once, and that's it. And these are going to be very small capsules of professional development, lasting ideally, well, the original idea was 5 minutes, but I just can't do it. So maybe 10, 15 minutes max. Totally stream of consciousness, thinking on my feet, telling you how I feel about things. So don't expect the typical Gianfranco of the workshops and webinars that you may have attended. If you want to see that Gianfranco, please join my webinars, which I will start staging online on using the Zoom platform from next week onwards. I think midweek, somewhere between Wednesday or Thursday. So let's get started. First of all, why I chose curriculum design is because you asked for it. You know, I've had loads and loads of requests, and all the workshops that I attended recently on curriculum design, the numbers were twice as many as any other workshop that I was staging. In some cases, 100, 150 teachers. And the reason is that at the moment in England, these three words, intent, implementation, and impact, echo in everyone's ears. Everyone is stressing about it. Why? These three words refer to the inspectors, the schools inspectors framework, by which inspectors are assessing schools' performance. So when inspectors comes to your school in England, they are actually starting asking a lot of questions about curriculum design. And, you know, I'm quite happy about this development. I know that it adds a lot of stress to you. You know, the job is already busy and demanding as it is, you know, a huge workload. But, you know, this means that they're encouraging teachers to actually ask themselves questions about their principles, about the rationale for what you do in the classroom. And I've seen in 25 years of teaching, I made loads of mistakes as a teacher and a curriculum designer. And I wish that in those days, when I started my profession, somebody actually asked me to think about what I was doing. Because when you know what you're doing, you feel empowered. When you don't know what you're doing, you're struggling. You're relying on other people's tips and resources, and you kind of have a sense of randomness about your profession, which, married with the other issues, the other challenges that we have, makes teaching even worse. So let's get started. Today, I will be talking to you about the key steps in curriculum design. I'm not going to delve into them to a great extent because I'm only going to have 10 minutes. I'm going to give you a flavor of the main issues, the main decisions, and how to go about them. If you want to know further, attend one of my webinars or wait until the following CPD quickies in which I will be concerning myself with those topics. So let's start. Step number one. A key one which points to why textbooks most of the time, or very often at least, are not really good, don't suit your learners, is what we call needs and environmental analysis. In needs analysis, you look at the learner and the background of that learner. You know, there are many individual variables which affect the success of language teaching. Yeah. One individual variable is aptitude. You know, how good your students are along 6 factors. Number one, their ability to identify sounds. Number two, their ability to identify the function of words in a sentence when they hear the input. 3, their ability to notice identifying patterns in the input they receive. 4, their rote memory. 5, their working memory, how effectively and quickly your working memory, your brain processes input, which is found to be one of the strongest factors correlating with success is language learning. And of course, the sixth trait, language learning strategies, what the students do at home or in class to learn, which according to research can differ greatly from individual to individual. And if you were that geek that, like I was, that at home would go back to what they didn't understand in the classroom, or to the vocabulary they didn't necessarily learn effectively in the classroom, or who found all sort of ways to find videos and text in the target language to learn more on your own, you would understand what I mean by language learning strategies and their importance in language learning. Some people argue that language learning cannot happen in the classroom. It happens this way. Needs analysis means looking at what you can realistically achieve with the students. Are these upper middle class students who have learned from their parents that language learning is important? Or are these kids from a very highly depraved area where languages don't matter, where life in itself is already a struggle, that, you know, language is something that doesn't remotely cross your mind? Because, you know, with those kids, you'll have to do much more work in terms of building self-efficacy, can-do attitude, building motivation, working on eradicating bad stereotypes against the French, the German, the Spaniards, or the Italians. With the other kids, instead, would be more an issue of working on refining their syntax, their accuracy, their fluency. In other words, you will be looking at what the textbook never looks at. The human side of learning. Who is this child? What can I realistically do with them? And of course, this alone is not enough. You have to look also at the environment in which these kids are operating. I'm talking about the school setting. Even if you have the greatest ambitions with the kids you're teaching, what resources are available? What technology? How many photocopies can you do every year? And of course, the school, the management. What is their mission? What are their expectations? How much do they pay you? All of these things will determine what you're going to do in the next step. The next step is your goal. You're setting up your general goal. It's like a statement, a mission statement. And figure yourself sitting down in front of your learner, your student, a typical student, at the end of each cycle, or one cycle. It's up to you. It could be by the end of the year, by the end of the course. If you teach in England, it could be first by the end of year 9, then by the end of year 11, or at the end of each academic year. What do you want them to be able to do? This is not your specific outcomes. This is your general goal. So by the end of the year, a typical student at St. Thomas More will be able to be fluent, accurate, interacting with a native speaker in real operating conditions. He will be knowledgeable of the main feature of the culture. Whichever direction you go will determine your outcomes, which is step 3, deciding your outcomes. So you will decide now what in each strand of language learning your students will achieve. And it has to be something attainable, realistic, and measurable. Yeah. So you will decide, for instance, using the 4-strand framework by Paul Nation, but you can use whatever you want. You will decide what students will be able to do in terms of understanding meaning. Understanding meaning could be understanding text, but what kind of text, what level of complexity, and when you're talking about understanding people, talking at natural speed, near native speed, in how many contexts. Then you will pass on to thinking about your communication strand. What will it be able to say? How accurately? How fluently? In speaking, writing? Are you going to prioritize speaking, writing, both? So as you can see, there's a lot of decision to take. Strand number 3, form, knowledge of form or mastery of form. What are they going to be able to do in that area? Are they going to be able to conjugate all the verbs, or are they going to conjugate those verbs in abstract, or you want to make sure they can actually do it in real time, in real life-like situations? Decision number 4 pertains the fluency strand. So this is the strand which to me is most important and the most neglected in the UK and in many other schools around the world, because we don't make time for it, because we don't inject enough resources in it. The ability to speak, listen, read, speak, and write fluently. In other words, automaticity. But not automaticity as in repeating verb conjugation as fast as you can. That is an aspect of it, but not the most important one, is the ability to use language in real life-like situation, which, as I will say in a different CPD quickie, it's the most important aspect of language learning and the most neglected. So now you got to step 3. You have ascertained what kind of student you are teaching. You've done a 360, yeah, in that area and in the area of the learning context. Then you have now clearly laid out what your goals are. Ideally, as a head of department, you will have done that with your students, with your colleagues, democratically as possible. The next step, you now narrow down your goals into the 4 strands of language learning, 5 if you want to include culture, of course, if you got the time. Otherwise, that would be embedded in all the other 4. How? For instance, when you are developing the communication strand, you might want to think about the cultural skills which they might need to communicate effectively. Yeah? Now, the next step, extremely important, content. The content is instrumental, and it interacts with all the other steps that you've taken and all the other ones that you're going to take. And content defines in many ways what you're going to teach. Because if you decide that your content is grammar, you are skewing your teaching towards abstract knowledge of acquisition of mathematical formulae, how beau become belle, how gros become grosse, the position of words in the sentence, and you kind of telling your students that's the most important thing to focus on, and your tests will focus on that. So when you choose a pure knowledge-based, grammar-based curriculum, where you have grammar structures and single words to put together to form sentences, you are on dodgy grounds, because you're skewing it towards knowledge. It's instead your content becomes communicative functions, like I do, for instance, and you decide that the content is going to be a list of functions that you and your colleagues decided are the most important ones in order to forge a student who is an effective communicator, who can operates effectively in the target language country or countries. Then you can see how you're skewing the teaching towards fluency. And you can see how this decision, whether to go one way, another, or somewhere where you mix both, which can be done, that's what EPI does, for instance, that would be affected by the second step that we took. Remember? Deciding what is the kind of learner you're trying to forge. Now, you figured out your intent. In other words, you have now set out clearly what you want to achieve and what you're going to cover. But all of this is nothing without principles, because fluency needs to have an underpinning framework in order to be attained. You need to now figure out, based hopefully not on the textbook, but on your principles, how you're going to get to that general goal, how you're going to achieve those outcomes, and most importantly, how you're going to cover that content effectively so that it is durable, that it actually is embedded in the students' cognition so well that they're never going to forget. The typical "j'ai joué" or "jugué al fútbol" that every single one of your Spanish students or French students can say. You need to get to the point where kids can spontaneously produce every single bit of language that you will have put in that list of chunks or single words or verbs that you're planning to teach. And for that, you need a core set of principles. At that point, you can implement your intent. That's going to be our next CPD Quickie. And I want to leave you with this task. At the end of each CPD Quickie, I'll give you a little task. Don't worry, no homework. Just think about this. What is your set of non-negotiable principles that is going to underpin your implementation? I'll just give you some of my principles, for instance. These are non-negotiable things that you would have every single time that you plan a sequence of lessons. Not a lesson. Please think about sequences from now on. How I get my students from the modernist stage to spontaneity. Think in those terms. Don't think about atoms, you're just a small, just a lesson and plan lesson by lesson. It doesn't work like that. Language acquisition doesn't happen like that. And I'll tell you some of my principles. Number one, ensuring that students have plenty of opportunities to process every single target language item extensively before going to production. Two, I want to create durable learning. Three, in the formative years of language learning, listening has to take center stage. I'll give you another one, which is very important for me. Teaching should, and I mean this should be the most important thing, facilitate learning. We know from research that this is one of the most important problems with kids these days. They find it difficult. And there's many other principles. I came out with about 12 or 13 which underpin my approach. I'm going to talk about that in the last CPD Quickie. I hope this was useful, and hopefully see you next time. All the best.